If you want to solve the housing crisis, you usually have to pave over a forest.
Right.
Or, if you want to build some sort of eco-friendly utopia, it usually results in this hyper-futuristic glass tower that no normal family could ever actually afford.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a luxury product.
Exactly. For decades, city planners have treated the housing crisis and the climate emergency like a zero-sum game. You can either house people cheaply or you can save the planet, but you certainly can't afford to do both at the same time.
Which is why the blueprint we are unpacking today is so unusual, because it completely rejects that premise.
Yeah.
We are looking at a localized project that treats affordable housing and environmental regeneration as, well, the exact same mechanism.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at a document simply titled the Terra Nostra Model.pdf. We source this from wikiresidence.ca and infodrone.ca, where it's available in both text and audio.
And it's a fascinating read.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore how a single development in Montreal, the Terra Nostra project, is attempting to solve those two massive headaches at the exact same time.
Right.
And they're doing it by treating the city itself not as some static backdrop, but as a renewable resource.
Right. The term the document uses is a living laboratory for circular urbanism.
Circular urbanism.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who wants to understand the future of how cities operate, whether you're an urban planner, an economics buff, or just a resident wondering why your rent keeps going up while your neighborhood gets hotter and more congested, this blueprint lays out a tangible, mechanical alternative to the way we've built cities for, like, the last 100 years.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand what circular urbanism is, we first have to understand the old model.
Right, the baseline.
Yeah, the source calls it the take, make, waste model. It's a very linear, predictable pipeline.
Extract, build, discard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A developer extracts raw materials, clears a green field on the edge of town, builds a sprawling subdivision, and then 50 years later, when it degrades, we tear it down, throw the debris in a landfill, and start all over again somewhere further out.
And that linear model relies on a really heavy assumption, which is that land and materials are infinite and cheap.
Right.
But we are hitting the physical limits of that assumption right now.
It essentially functions like a Ponzi scheme of infrastructure. I mean, you build cheap housing on the outskirts, but to make it livable, the city has to drag out brand new water mains.
Pave new multi-lane roads.
Right. And string up miles of new electrical grids. You literally have to keep expanding outward just to justify the sheer cost of maintaining the older sprawl.
The Terra Nostra approach halts that expansion entirely. Let's look at the physical site to see how this works in practice.
Yeah, let's set the scene.
So this project is located in the borough of Ahuntsic-Cartierville in Montreal. And instead of buying a cheap, empty field outside the city limits, they acquired a former industrial site, a plot of land that was already paved over, already deeply embedded in the city grid. The plan is to transform this concrete footprint into a hub of 323 affordable housing units.
But wait, let me push back on the terminology for a second here.
Sure.
The document refers to this strategy as gentle densification or smart densification.
Right.
Whenever developers use those phrases, it often feels like a highly sanitized, PR-friendly way of saying, we are going to cram as many people into as small a space as legally possible to maximize our yield.
Yeah, the classic crowded apartment block.
Right. Is this just dressing up a crowded apartment block in green terminology?
What's fascinating here is that the difference lies in the unseen economics beneath the ground. The densification here isn't just about packing units together.
Okay, then what is it?
It's about utilizing the infrastructure that taxpayers have already funded. By building on the remains of yesterday's city, an old industrial zone, the developers are plugging directly into high-capacity sewer lines.
Oh, I see.
Existing transit routes, established power grids. The municipality doesn't have to spend tens of millions of dollars building new roads or dragging plumbing out to the middle of nowhere.
So the city saves a fortune before a single brick is even laid. Just simply because the skeleton of the neighborhood is already there.
Precisely. And that philosophy extends to the actual demolition of the old industrial site, too.
Because there were already buildings on this lot, right?
Yeah. The standard procedure would be to bring in wrecking balls, smash the old structures, load fleets of diesel trucks with the rubble, and just haul it to a landfill.
Right. The waste part of take, make, waste.
Exactly. Then you truck in tons of newly manufactured concrete and steel. But Terra Nostra utilized a process called selective deconstruction.
The source mentions they prioritize material recovery.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that means taking the building apart piece by piece, like almost like a massive Lego set, rather than just swinging a wrecking ball at it.
That is the exact mechanism. Selective deconstruction means you audit the existing structure. You carefully dismantle it to salvage the steel beams. Yeah, you take the old concrete foundation, crush it on site, and reuse it as aggregate for the new foundation.
That's incredible.
You preserve the brickwork. By keeping the resources that are already sitting on the site, you drastically cut down the carbon emissions associated with manufacturing new materials.
And you cut out all the heavy transport required to move them, too.
Exactly.
But upcycling an industrial city site like a giant Lego set isn't cheap up front. The developers still have to actually build this 323-unit utopian urban lab.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive undertaking.
So how do you capitalize a project of this scale? Because when I look at the financial breakdown in the source, it lists a total estimated budget of $115 million.
It's a staggering amount of capital.
Right. If the lead developer here isn't some massive corporate condo developer with deep pockets, how on earth do they convince a bank to give them $115 million?
Well, the lead developer is a nonprofit organization called Habitations Transat. The document notes they are experts in managing large-scale, affordable projects.
Okay, but still, a nonprofit.
Right, you are correct that a nonprofit cannot simply walk into a commercial bank and secure a 9-figure loan. It requires a highly complex capital stack, what they call a public-private partnership.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's slow down and look at how that capital stack actually functions, because the source throws out a lot of acronyms and huge numbers here.
It does, yeah. It could be a bit dense.
It mentions that $50 to $60 million of that budget comes from public subsidies. Specifically, it names affordable housing programs like PHAR, alongside support from the Société d'Habitation du Québec, the SHQ, and the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the CMHC.
To demystify those acronyms, we have to look at their mechanical rules in the funding.
Please do.
Programs like PHAR are municipal and provincial mechanisms designed specifically to inject direct grant money into affordable housing. They provide the hard cash needed to get the shovels in the ground.
Okay, so that's the first $60 million.
Right. But a $60 million subsidy still leaves a massive gap to reach $115 million.
You're still short over $50 million bucks.
Exactly. This is where the debt financing from the CMHC becomes the most critical gear in the machine.
Because the nonprofit still has to borrow tens of millions of dollars from a bank to finish the build. And taking on that kind of debt is incredibly dangerous if the interest rates spike.
The CMHC steps in to provide guaranteed loans at preferential, highly subsidized interest rates.
Okay, how does that differ from a normal developer?
Well, for a traditional for-profit condo developer, the goal is to build fast, sell units at a premium, pay off high-interest private equity loans, and extract a 15 or 20% profit margin.
Right, get in, get paid, get out.
Exactly. But a nonprofit like Habitations Transat isn't selling these units. They are holding on to them forever to rent them out affordably.
So they don't need a massive profit margin, but they absolutely need their monthly mortgage payments to the bank to be as low as structurally possible.
Precisely.
If the interest rate is too high, the rent they collect won't cover the debt, and the building goes bankrupt in 5 years.
And that's why the CMHC loan guarantee is the mechanism that ensures the project's long-term survival. The government essentially co-signs the loan, absorbing the risk.
So the bank is happy.
Right. The bank will offer an interest rate low enough that the nonprofit can actually survive while charging below market rent.
Makes total sense. And just to ground this timeline for you listening, today is March 17th, 2026.
Right.
According to the implementation schedule in the blueprint, they spent 2023 and 2024 navigating that complex funding, doing community consultations, and executing that selective deconstruction we talked about.
The Lego set phase.
Exactly. By the winter of 2025, they finalized the new foundations. So right now, in the spring of 2026, they are actively working on the building envelope and the interior build-out, heading straight for a 2027 delivery.
And during this current construction phase, the project's circular philosophy translates into hard, measurable savings.
How so?
Well, the source highlights that by utilizing bio-sourced material.
Wait, what does that mean exactly? Bio-sourced.
It means materials derived from renewable organic matter rather than petroleum or energy-intensive minerals.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So by using those and by aggressively sorting and reusing on-site components, they are targeting a 12% reduction in construction waste management costs alone.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And the document also points out a projected 20% reduction in future maintenance costs
Yes.
because they are building to BO standards.
Yeah.
And just to clarify for anyone unfamiliar, achieving EAD standards doesn't just mean planting a few trees out front and calling it green.
No, not at all. It's highly technical.
It requires a rigorous third-party verification process. The building has to physically prove it is airtight, that it eliminates thermal bridging so heat doesn't escape in the Montreal winter.
Which is brutal.
Right. And that its systems genuinely consume drastically less water and electricity.
That upfront investment in high-performance architecture introduces a concept the source refers to as social profitability.
Social profitability.
Yeah. Traditional real estate development measures success purely by financial yield per square foot.
How much cash can this box generate?
Exactly. Social profitability argues that by spending slightly more carefully during the design and construction phase, you create an asset that costs 20% less to operate.
Right.
It requires fewer repairs and provides a healthier environment for the community over the next 50 years.
Which brings us to the actual community. We've covered the $115 million capital stack, the Lego set deconstruction, and the green architecture.
The hardware.
Yeah, the hardware. But in 2027, moving trucks are going to roll up to this site. Real human beings are going to unpack their lives into these 323 units.
Yes, they are.
The blueprint projects a population of about 850 new residents. Who gets to live in this highly engineered urban laboratory?
The demographic breakdown of those 323 units is heavily engineered to address specific gaps in the city's housing supply. For instance, nearly 40% of the apartments are designated as 3 bedrooms or more.
Okay, that is a massive detail.
It really is.
If you look at the standard condo developments going up in major cities today, they're predominantly, 500 square foot glass boxes?
Pretty much. Studios and 1-bedrooms.
Yeah, they are built for young professionals or investors.
Mm-hmm.
There is a dire, crying need for family apartments in Montreal right now.
Absolutely.
Families are routinely pushed entirely off the island into the deep suburbs because they simply cannot find an apartment with enough bedrooms for their kids that doesn't cost their entire combined salary.
And while 40% of the space is reserved to anchor families back into the city core, they are simultaneously addressing the other end of the demographic spectrum.
Okay, who's that?
Seniors and singles. A large portion of the studios in 3.5 units, which is Quebec terminology for a 1-bedroom apartment, are specifically adapted for them.
Adapted how?
The architectural goal is to allow aging in place. As a resident's mobility changes over the decades, the physical space accommodates them, meaning they don't have to be uprooted from their community just because they need a walker or a wheelchair.
And the affordability metric attached to these units is very concrete. The rents are mandated to be maintained at around 80% of the median market rent.
Mm-hmm.
To give that some context, median market rent is essentially the middle-of-the-pack price for an apartment in that specific neighborhood. So if the going rate for a 3-bedroom in Ahuntsic is, say, $2,000, these units would be capped around $1,600.
Exactly. Furthermore, a portion of the units are specifically reserved for households eligible for the Rent Supplement Program.
What does that program do?
The Rent Supplement Program is a vital safety net. It dictates that eligible low-income tenants will only pay 25% of their actual income toward rent, regardless of what the unit costs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the government subsidizes the difference directly to the nonprofit.
But let me stop you there, because this raises a massive paradox in modern urban planning.
Okay, what's that?
You take an industrial site. You secure $115 million to build a beautiful LED-certified complex with green roofs, family units, and community gardens.
Sounds great so far.
It does. But usually, the second a shiny new development like that opens its doors, it triggers radical gentrification in the surrounding blocks.
Oh, right. The neighborhood suddenly becomes highly desirable.
Yeah, exactly. Property values spike, taxes go up, and the very low-income residents you were trying to help get completely priced out of the local grocery stores and eventually their homes.
Yeah, it's a very common cycle.
So how does Terra Nostra not just become a catalyst for the gentrification of Ahuntsic-Cartierville?
This raises an important question. And the anti-gentrification mechanism is actually built directly into the legal structure of the leasing model we just discussed.
The nonprofit model.
Yes. In a traditional private development, market forces dictate rent. If the neighborhood gets trendier, the landlord raises the rent to match demand, forcing the original tenant out.
Right.
But by permanently handing ownership of these 323 units to a nonprofit and legally binding the rents to 80% of the median market rent or tying them to the rent supplement program, you remove those units from the speculative real estate market entirely.
So even if the blocks around them gentrify and prices skyrocket, the 850 people living inside Terra Nostra are completely shielded from those market spikes.
Exactly.
You're physically anchoring affordable housing into the landscape.
The source describes it as weaving a resilient social fabric, and they use the physical architecture of the building to reinforce that sociology.
How does architecture do that?
Well, the document highlights an anti-isolation design philosophy. The complex includes community rooms, secure interior courtyards, shared terraces, and collective gardens.
Oh, I see.
Furthermore, 100% of the units are visitable, with a significant portion being universally accessible for people with severe mobility constraints.
That structural layout is fascinating because social isolation is becoming a quiet epidemic in major metropolises.
It really is.
You can live in a high-rise tower surrounded by 2,000 other human beings, ride the elevator with them every single day, and never learn a single person's name.
Yeah, it's incredibly common.
The architecture of Terra Nostra is trying to force accidental positive interactions. You literally have to walk past the collective garden, you share the interior courtyard. It's using architecture as a remedy for urban loneliness.
And the social and economic impact of those 850 residents doesn't stop at the property line either. A development of this density has a massive gravitational pull on the local economy.
Right.
During this current construction phase, the project is generating over 450 direct and indirect jobs.
But the long-term ripple effect is what really caught my eye. The force estimates that once the complex is fully populated in 2027, those 850 residents will inject approximately $3.5 million annually into the immediate local businesses.
That's a huge injection of capital.
It is. We were talking about the independent cafes, the grocery stores, the pharmacies operating right there on Fleury Street.
This creates a compounding economic benefit. When you provide heavily subsidized, affordable housing directly inside the city, near transit and employment hubs, you drastically reduce a family's transportation costs.
Because they aren't driving an hour each way.
Exactly. They are no longer forced to commute 2 hours every day from the outer suburbs, pouring money into gas and car maintenance.
Right.
That saved money increases their daily purchasing power, which they then spend at the businesses on Fleury Street.
It's a completely virtuous cycle. The money stays in the neighborhood ecosystem.
It does.
And speaking of ecosystems, we have to look at how the daily operation of this building impacts the actual environment, because that circular model extends far beyond construction.
Right, the ongoing operations.
Earlier, we mentioned they're aiming for an energy performance that is 25% higher than the standard building code requires.
Yes, and the mechanical systems driving that efficiency include centralized high-performance heat pumps and geothermal systems.
Geothermal.
Oh!
In a housing complex.
Yeah. Geothermal essentially uses the constant temperature of the earth beneath the building to heat the units in the winter and cool them in the summer.
That's brilliant.
It is, and it requires a fraction of the electricity that traditional baseboard heaters or air conditioners use.
And the really brilliant part of that environmental tech is who actually reaps the financial reward. Better energy efficiency isn't just some talking point for a climate brochure. It translates into tangibly lower utility bills.
Exactly.
It actively reduces the monthly Hydro-Quebec bills for the low-income renters living inside. Once again, solving the climate constraint directly benefits the tenant's wallet.
And the most striking example of that dual benefit might be the project's water management system.
Let's hear it.
The design incorporates extensive green roofs, some of which are dedicated to urban agriculture, allowing residents to literally grow their own food.
Okay.
And alongside those roofs, they have engineered rain gardens at ground level. The document notes this specific infrastructure will reduce urban water runoff by 30%.
That 30% metric might sound a bit dry, but it is a massive deal for city planners.
Huge.
To visualize why, just think of a major city like Montreal during a torrential downpour. When rain hits acres of traditional concrete and asphalt, it has nowhere to soak in.
It just pools.
Right. Millions of gallons of water rush directly into the municipal sewer systems all at once. And when those systems get overwhelmed, the sewers back up, basements flood, and raw sewage can actually be pushed out into local rivers.
It's a disaster. But the green roofs and rain gardens of Terra Nostra function like a massive, highly efficient organ within the body of the city.
Like a sponge.
Exactly like a giant sponge. When a storm hits, the soil and vegetation absorb the downpour, hold the water, and release it incredibly slowly into the municipal system over several hours or days.
It essentially acts like a dialysis machine, saving the city's kidneys, the sewer system, from going into total failure during a flash flood. The building takes on the burden of the city's infrastructure rather than adding to it.
Which perfectly encapsulates the core thesis of this entire deep dive. The source document features a quote that anchors this philosophy perfectly.
What does it say?
It states, "Terra Nostra is more than just a roof. It is proof that the city of tomorrow can be built on the remains of yesterday's without sacrificing affordability."
I love that. They took what any traditional developer would view as massive, expensive constraints, a contaminated industrial site, strict energy efficiency targets, the need to manage thousands of gallons of stormwater.
All usually seen as deal breakers.
Right, and they transformed those exact constraints into the architectural solutions.
And through that transformation, the Ahuntsic-Cartierville borough is actively establishing itself as the benchmark for how circular urbanism can be executed on a commercial scale.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out? Terra Nostra proves that a housing project does not have to be a compromise where someone inevitably loses.
Exactly.
It could be a victory for the taxpayer, who saves tens of millions in new infrastructure costs by avoiding urban sprawl. It can be a victory for the environment through selective deconstruction and geothermal engineering.
And most importantly,
Yes, it can be a victory for the future tenant who gets an affordable, dignified, and socially connected place to live.
it demonstrates that concepts like circularity and social profitability are not just academic theories.
They're real.
When backed by strategic capital like CMHC guarantees and designed with rigorous intent, they are highly functional financial tools.
For you listening today, I highly encourage you to take a walk around your own city. Look at the empty lots. Look at the sprawling new subdivisions chewing into the tree line.
Look at the construction sites downtown.
Yeah. Ask yourself what kind of hidden infrastructure costs your city is paying for that sprawl. Are the developers in your neighborhood operating on the old take-make-waste model, or are they beginning to think circularly?
And that leaves us with a fascinating thread to pull on. We have seen how effectively circular urbanism and selective deconstruction can upcycle a mid-sized industrial site in Montreal.
Right.
But what other massive, invisible, or abandoned spaces in our modern cities are currently sitting empty, waiting to be utilized? Think about the dead, sprawling shopping malls surrounded by oceans of unused asphalt in the suburbs. Or consider the massive hollowed-out downtown office towers left permanently vacant by the shift to remote work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Could those monolithic remnants of yesterday's economy be the perfect candidates to become the next Terra Nostra?
That is exactly the kind of question that forces a city to rethink what is possible. Thank you so much for joining us as we unpack this incredible blueprint. Keep looking closely at the systems building the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.